So hey everyone, good evening, and thanks for joining. For those of you that are new or don't know me, my name is Robert Yee. I'm the engineering manager for now Orange County, actually, the Orange County team. I'm actually going to be changing roles next week. I'm going to be working with the data center networking team in the West. But on my team right now is an engineer named Moe Ziaee. He's going to be doing our presentation tonight. And say hi, Mo.
Hey everybody, Moe Ziaee. I'm a systems architect here at Cisco, and I'll actually work for Robert right now until next week.
Yeah, until next week. So Mo's going to be covering a couple things. He's going to go over a couple of management tools that we have built for UCS, a Unified Computing System. But before we get into that, let's just spend 1 minute talking about UCS. So by a show of hands, or your little icon that you can press, who here has worked with UCS, our Unified Computing System? Okay, I see Ying Yu. Are you the only one so far? Maybe. Okay. So Unified Computing System, we've been in the server market for, maybe some of you don't even know, but we've been in the server market for about 10 years now. And it's been pretty successful for us. We have our 5th generation servers that are out now. And then our 6th generation servers are coming out not too long from now, pretty soon. So we'll be on our M6 servers coming out. And one of the things that was, not just one, there's a couple of things that were special at UCS, but one of the things was definitely the fact that UCS was the first computing system that had an API, right? It was XML based, it's still XML based, but it allowed for extensive management. And the management that was built in was something called UCS Manager. It was an interface that was built into what we call the Fabric Interconnects. And it originally started out as a Java-based tool, which was pretty painful, but it's now native web-based. You just access the web page that's hosted on the box itself. However, as customers bought more and more UCS, right? From a management perspective, you either had to manage each pod separately on UCS Manager by UCS Manager, or you used something like UCS Director, which was an aggregator of tools. Okay, so the modern version of where things are at is something called Intersight, and Intersight is, and Mo's not going to like what I'm going to say here, but Intersight is like Meraki for UCS, and Mo's going to correct me, but it's basically pretty simple, right? It's actually cloud-hosted management, not just for one pod of UCS, but for your entire UCS infrastructure, no matter where it is across the world. Whether it's managed UCS like our B series or C series, whether it's Hyperflex, or whether it's standalone C series servers in some remote oil field somewhere, right? It can all be managed through Intersight. So Mo's going to talk about Intersight, and he's going to show you guys a demo. It's pretty cool. And it's a platform, right? So keep in mind, it's a platform. It's very extensible. And on top of Intersight, Mo's going to demo something called IWO, or Intersight Workload Optimizer, which is the webified version of something called CWOM, Cisco Workload Optimizer. That's kind of the introduction. And I think we'll probably go maybe about an hour, maybe a little bit over. I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Mo, and I'm going to go on mute. Any questions before we get started? If not, I'll hand it over to Mo. All right, excellent. Thank you, Mo. It's all yours.
Thank you, Robert. Let me share my screen here. Great. Well, hi again, everyone. As I said, my name is Moe Ziaee. I'm a systems architect here at Cisco. And I'm going to talk to you guys about Cisco Intersight and Intersight Workload Optimizer, which is basically it's an add-on on top of the Cisco Intersight. We'll get to it. Explain how extensive this tool is, and it can get more and more tools built into it. Now, before I go about talking about Intersight and IWO, this topic gonna have a lot of discussion around workloads, a lot of virtualization, a lot about Azure and AWS. And rightfully, you may ask what a Cisco engineer has to do with any of this. I'm not working for VMware, I'm not working for any other company out there. So you may want to ask and say, what is my background, and how do I have the credit to talk about all this? So I think it would be beneficial if I uh, introduce myself better. I'm here at Cisco right now. I'm a systems architect, as I said. I cover Atlanta OC area, mostly commercial customers. But I have about 14 years in IT industry prior to Cisco. I've been in different roles. I've been in network engineering, been system engineering. Most recently, I've been a senior system engineer at East West Bank and a few other financial institutions prior to that. So spent a whole lot of time on virtualization, on Microsoft, on Citrix, aside from Cisco, also Azure and AWS. Like you see, I do have other certifications aside my Cisco certification. I'm VMware double VCP. I think I spent way too many years working on Citrix. I just love Citrix. I've been working on them since MetaFrame, and I can't remember a role I had that I didn't have to do Microsoft work in there. Either it was Active Directory setup or Exchange or any other added services on top of AD. So that's my background. And what I'm going to talk to you guys, this is the agenda we have for the call today. Basically, our call today is going to be cut into two pieces. I'm going to talk about Intersight, which is a management solution, to briefly explain it. And I'm going to talk about Intersight Workload Optimizer, which sits on top of it. For Intersight, we're going to start explaining why do we need something like Intersight? Why do we need a centralized management solution for our compute portfolio? And what was the challenges that Cisco came to the decision of bringing Intersight? And I'll explain how Intersight does what it does. And then we'll talk about Intersight Workload Optimizer. Again, we're going to talk about why do we need it? What is it going to do for us as it's going to help us with our infrastructure management? What is it going to provide for us? Um, it's very interesting how it works and how does it do its job. So I'm going to take a little bit of time and explain you how does it get to go about helping the customers. And then at the end, I'm going to go through a demo of Intersight and IWO both together. Um, I hope we will have plenty of time left at the end. I'd like to walk through it and show you guys everything. All right, with that being said, let's start talking about Cisco Intersight. We're going to talk about the challenges first. So when we want to talk about why Cisco started working and building this management system, we wanted to see what was the reason, what was the challenges we were seeing in managing the infrastructure. If you are a system engineer or if not managing, let's say, compute infrastructure like I did plenty for many years, you know that you have to deal with so many tools. You most likely have a compute management tool. If it's Cisco, you will have a UCS manager, or you may have your, let's say, integrated management console for individual servers. You may have HyperFlex. If you're a Dell shop or a HP shop, depends on what you're consuming from Dell or HP, you will have a different management solution for different servers. You may even have to go to individual servers to ILO or manage them or install hardware or install hypervisors on top of them. Then you have your hypervisor management, and then you will have your SAN management. There's just a lot of tools that infrastructure team has to get familiar with. It's going to add to the cost of training. It's going to increase the number of tools that you have to go check. You have to figure out where you need to put your attention to see if your systems are operating the way it should be. And also, you need to maintain these systems. So you need to figure out when do you have to upgrade, where do you need to go look at different components that you have to upgrade. So there is plenty of tools, and it's not only across all the industry. We see it a lot in UCS. So Cisco building UCS, and Rob explained we've been in the compute business for 10 years. We've gone a long way. We started from an Java API driven UCS with a UCS manager. We have single servers. We have our HyperFlex hyperconverged solution now. We're expanding the portfolio. But we understand it's not just about managing servers anymore. It's a whole system. It's a whole platform for our customers. We've been hearing from all our customers that what they're looking for is they're looking for a unified management solution. So they're looking for um, having one place to go to so they can look at their inventory, they can configure their compute gear, they can update everything through one place. And then also, what happens when it comes down to scale, when they have to have multiple machines, when you have a large infrastructure that you have to manage. I personally been working with UCS for about, I think, since 2014, 13, I've been working with it. And I managed multiple data centers. And each data centers, I had multiple pods. So at any given time, I had to go log into 5 or 6 different UCS pods to be able to manage all my servers. Now, at some point, Cisco came out with a product named UCS Central that I loved it. Um, it would let you manage multiple UCS pods together, but it was only for UCS pods that are connected to Fabric Interconnect. It was basically a complementary tool on top of the UCS manager. And also, every time I had to go do, let's say, an upgrade in my hypervisor level, and if I installed bare metal server, Windows server, if I had ESXi running, if I had Zen servers running, or any other hypervisors running, if anytime I had to go there, I had to go figure out what version of firmware on UCS side has to be used to be compatible with it, right? So I had to go outside, go Google search, look for different material online to figure out what I need to accomplish my job. And um, and I did this like I guess any organization that should be on a schedule. So we, let's say, have every 6 months we will go through all the latest release of UCS. We looked at everything to see when we're gonna upgrade. It was a very time-consuming process. And with these challenges in mind is when Cisco decided to introduce Intersight or build Intersight. So what Intersight is, it's a cloud solution. It's a SaaS solution. It basically Cisco managed and Cisco hosted. It's a management portal for all Cisco compute portfolio and more. So basically lets you manage all your UCS or individual servers, Hyperflex. It also started pulling in a lot of the added features and functionalities that we had in the Cisco UCS family, like UCS Director, which is basically an orchestration tool. So it started pulling that orchestration features into the inner side, and it's expanding more and more and more. And it covers pretty much everything that Cisco sells in the compute portfolio. Now, uh, what Intersight does, it's not just Robert just brought up the point that Intersight is like Meraki for compute. And that was a vision to start with. We wanted to simplify a tool to manage all our infrastructure, right? That I agree with that. That was the vision to start Intersight. However, Intersight grew to be a platform. It today, Intersight, the way Cisco is looking at it is a platform to move forward. So everything that we're gonna go build in the compute is going to be around Intersight. And basically, it's gonna be the one point that we're gonna focus on to manage all our infrastructure, and there's gonna be a consumption model, right? So it's SaaS driven. You're going to be able to scale up and down in Intersight, and you're going to be able to manage all your portfolio. And so we're basically going to um, have this AWS-like, Azure-like management for our portfolio, which in future we'll be able to add on to it. And I'll kind of talk about what are those things that are getting added on right now. What Intersight does for you today, it lets you to start from day one. It lets you configure your boxes. It'll let you start monitoring and getting alerts and maintaining your environment. Basically, it lets you get a lot quicker deployment time. It lowers your administration costs of your environment, and it sits with you through the life cycle of the compute products that customer is consuming. Uh, now, with the new features that are getting rolled into the Intersight, and I'll talk about why Intersight is so expandable and how is it getting so many new features every day. With the new features getting added to it, now we can even optimize the resources for the customer. So customers not only rely on us to start building their whole infrastructure using this one tool, they can run their environment, they can get alerts, they can maintain their environment, they can also optimize their resources, they can look into their workloads and so on, and run their environment better and more efficient, which is the second part of this um, topic that I'm going to talk about Cisco Workload Optimizer. Uh, Intersight is covering every aspect of UCS portfolio, but not only that, we are also covering a lot of third-party integration. So Intersight is built with Open API in mind. It's all based on Open API. We are integrating into more and more third-party solutions. We are integrating to SAN solutions. So you can, when we started, we had Pure onboarded. So you can actually see and manage your Pure storage. Now we have Hitachi added in there too. We had VMware vCenter integration from day one, and it's been adding up on top of it. You can manage your VM, you can log into your virtual machines directly from your Intersight. And all this is being done through this little piece of virtual appliance that will give the customers to put in the data center. It's fully managed by Intersight. They don't have to upgrade it. It's basically just a proxy connection back into their on-prem environment. And this little piece of software is called Intersight Assist Appliance. Now that also allows us to add more integration on top of it, which is our integration with Turbonomics that we'll talk about a little more, called Cisco Intersight Workload Optimizer. The reason Intersight can do all this is the way it's architecture. So if you would have noticed, a lot of the newer softwares that are being built out, they're not monolithic softwares anymore. And Cisco has gone this way too. So you look at iOS XE today, it's fully modular. So you have all modules inside iOS XE that manages different aspects of the product. And then if you have to do upgrades, you have to build on top of it. If the developers have to add codes on it, they can do it a lot more efficiently and quicker. And similar way with Cisco Intersight is probably one of the most agile softwares that Cisco is building today. We built this based on the microservices, so it's fully built upon modules, and this allows us to uh, upgrade this and basically add new features to it on the fly continuously while operating this 24/7. If you would have been an early adopter of Cisco Intersight 2 years ago, if you would have looked at it 2 years ago and today, you would have seen very visible changes between the different versions. It's continuously upgrading, new features get added. Some of these new features are integration with third parties. Now, IWO is one we're going to talk about and explain a little more about, but we have a lot of integration get added on. Some of these are also integrated with other parts of the UCS portfolio. So when the Cisco HyperFlex came out at the beginning, it basically been built out to be an hyper-converged solution, and which was supposed to have a virtual layer on top of it. That will be ESXi, will be Hyper-V, basically a virtualization layer on top, and it will be a combination of storage and compute for our customers. Now, Cisco HyperFlex is also changing and new features getting added on it, which are all integrated with Intersight. Something we recently announced is called HyperFlex Application Platform, which what allows the customers to do is it allows customers to run Kubernetes or run containers on bare metal. So let's say if you have a customer that wants to run containers, they don't have to spend extra money on a virtualization layer to run on top of their HyperFlex. It can just run it bare metal on top of it. And with that announcement came the announcement of Cisco Intersight Kubernetes service, which complements the HyperFlex application platform. What Intersight Kubernetes services is one of the new services that got added to Intersight is a Kubernetes service that can integrate into pretty much any Kubernetes service out there. If you have Kubernetes on Azure, AWS, or Google, it basically can integrate to all that. It's a lightweight container management platform. It's fully curated, and it also lets you run Kubernetes on your Cisco HyperFlex bare metal. Or if you can, if it's your choice, you can run on top of hypervisor of your choice. All these features are getting added into um, Cisco Intersight every day, and this is a very evolving platform. Now, I would have normally stopped here to walk you guys through a demo of Intersight, but I think for the purpose of this conversation, I would like to continue to talk to you a little more about Intersight Workload Optimizer, which is another add-on features that we added to this Discovery site. And then at the end, talk to both of these platforms together. But before that, I'd like to open it to any questions that you might have about Intersight before I jump into the IWO. I take that as a no question, and we'll move on to Intersight Workload Optimizer. So exactly like the Kubernetes service that we just added on top of the Cisco Intersight, we also have Intersight Workload Optimizer. Now, before I start talking about this, I want to give you a quick note that you may know this product as VM Turbo or Turbonomics. We didn't reinvent the wheel here. If you've been into infrastructure management for a long time, you've definitely been approached by VM Turbo. They're one of the most mature products out there in the market. They've been around for a very long time. I use them as a customer, my customer days. So previously, we brought Turbonomics. We OEM that for Cisco product. We call that Cisco Workload Optimizer Management, or CVOM, and a lot of our customers used it. And now Turbonomics itself doesn't provide their product on a SaaS platform. It's normally a virtual machine deployment in your environment. Now, they allowed us to put this on top of our Intersight platform and provide it to our customers in a SaaS model, so our customers can consume it in a SaaS model. Instead of having like a virtual machine in their environment, they have to upgrade it, they have to maintain it. Now they can just add this feature on top of their Cisco Intersight. It's fully cloud managed. It connects to all their on-prem environment. And basically, it's the same product. Now, let's talk about Cisco Intersight Workload Optimizer. Before I get to the Workload Optimizer, I want to start talking about what is IT's job, because that exactly relates to what Cisco or what IWO does for the customers. So, what is IT's job? I've been into IT for a long time. Every time I work for an organization, the way I looked at my job was my job is to make sure this company or this organization, this financial organization, or bank, or any other company has a successful business. That was the priority one for my job. That was the reason I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning if the server was down or a network was down, right? Well, for a lot of us, that's the main goal of our job. Now, if I want to put it in a nice way, or want to explain it in an easy way, my job in IT was make sure that business critical application that my company relies upon will be performing, will be available to run, and also had to be done, I had to be run at the optimum cost possible. Because I worked in IT for a long time, we were always been looked upon as a cost by the rest of the organizations, by the rest of the business. So to be able to run an application or a business critical application for the business, we always had to balance three important things. We had to make sure the application is performant, has the right performance. It had to always be managed with a cost in mind, and we always had to be compliant with the business requirements. So those compliances could be either, let's say, the capacity planning, if you had a failover compliance that you had to meet. I always had to be either within N+1 or N+2 within all of my clusters. I always had to make sure that the machines or the application or whatever the application is running on, if it's container, if it's machines, if it's instances in the cloud, it's sized correctly so the application is running fine. And to be frank with you, a lot of times I had to oversize it to make sure I'm not getting any complaints from the developers that are running there. And with all that, the whole goal was to improve the business agility, because business of our business or the companies that is doing business, their agility of their business is relying on the performance of the business critical application. And that's what pretty much what Intersight Workload Optimizer or IWO does for you. It's a SaaS software. We deliver it in a SaaS format. It continuously analyzes the workloads and looks at the cost of running those workloads and look at the compliance constraints. See what your environment constraints are, and then automatically either allocate resources or move resources around, or can give you a recommendation to do so to make sure your applications will have the right performance. This type of system is usually normally called an application resource management. It's SaaS-based because we run on top of the Cisco Intersight. Now, normally I ask a set of questions from my customers when I'm talking about IWO to them. And that helps them understand what IWO does. I usually tell them, how do you decide what size you give to your workload? And it's normally, okay, we're installing this application, or our developers came out with these requirements. It's either a virtual machine, container, it needs this much of resources, storage, how fast the storage is going to be, network connectivity, how fast that's going to be. And I'll usually tell them, so when do you decide that you need to move this workload in your environment, wherever you have to get the best performance? And it's usually we don't move it. Maybe we have DRS in our clusters, or we might vMotion machines around, but we normally don't move anything, right? And when it comes down to adding more resources, most customers hear complaints. So my application is running slow. You're going to give me more resources. Normally, a conversation with either developers or your customers of the company or organization, that specific application is slow. I'm not able to get pass through the login screen or so on, and you decide, okay, now this application is running slow and need more resources. And this thing is the freeing up all the resources being used is always being neglected. Now, I gotta admit, I've done this manually myself. I probably ran some scripts looking at the virtual machines that haven't been logged into for a long time. I looked at the machines that have been provisioned for the developers that are not using anymore, or it's always been a manual process, and it's taken a lot of time, right? And this is pretty much what IWO does for customers. So a lot of the tasks that IWO does, what I'm trying to tell you is tasks that customers normally do, like the right sizing their workloads, making sure these workloads run with enough resources, scaling them up when they need it, scaling down or shutting down the resources that are not being used, so you can take back that extra resource and apply it elsewhere where you need it. And always hear from my customers, if it only does what I'm already doing today, even though I'm not doing it that great, why do I need it? And I tell them, because it's important that it can do it better than you. And we'll get to that, why it can do it better than you. So why does it do it better than any human out there? IWO is an interesting system, or turbonomics. I use different names for it, but let's just say IWO. IWO is the interesting system. It uses a supply-demand model in its modeling the applications. And basically, when it looks at an application, it uses a supply-demand model. And what is a supply-demand model? We'll go back to economics 101. When you have high demand and you have short supplies, the cost of product goes up. When you have high supplies and not enough demand, now the cost of manufacturing is up, right? You're producing something so much that you're not going to make enough money off of. That applies to IT too, and how you manage your resources. When you have a lot of application demand and you don't have enough resources to give to it, now you're running an application that is having a problem, and it's going to add to the cost of your business because your business is not able to run its mission critical applications in a performant manner. On the other hand, if you have way too many supply, that's when you have too much IT resources in your environment, but you don't have enough application demand, then you're going to be running a very expensive IT department, or going to be spending a lot of money on your IT resources, your infrastructure, without getting a good use out of it, right? So somewhere in here, there is something called an equilibrium, where your supply and demand meet, where it's the sweet spot that you have enough resources for enough application demand. And all IWO does, all IWO's job is to get you to that equilibrium. Now, to get you to that equilibrium, to be able to do any of this, it needs to have information. It needs to be able to get data to be able to analyze it. The great thing about IWO is it taps into everything. IWO looks into your hypervisors, can look into your cloud infrastructure. IWO is made for both on-prem and cloud workloads. It can look into your network. It can look into your underlying compute portfolio, if it's Cisco, if it's not Cisco. Because this product is Turbonomics, even though we OEM it, it's not made only with Cisco in mind, so it can connect to a large number of manufacturers out there. So it can connect to your container platforms, can connect to let's say your provisioning platforms, if you're using special orchestration tools, if you're using a different storage, if you have hyperconverged solutions out there. For Cisco, it connects to Hyperflex, connects to any storage that we work with. But another important thing that it connects to is it connects to something called APM, Application Performance Monitoring, or Application Performance Management Solutions. Now, Cisco has an APM. It's called AppDynamics. There are other APMs out there in the market, and IWO can connect to all of them. It's very important, and we'll get to it why. But wherever IWO taps into, it can pull information and give you that analytics and build that supply demand system, that supply chain model on top for you to see what is connected to what and what is being used, right? That's why that APM is important, because it can pull in that application information for you. Now, what does it do with all this information? So it started pulling all this information. First thing is abstraction. So it's going to start building a supply chain. Now, everything that you see in IWO, it's going to be inside a supply chain. So it's going to look at your virtual machine as a supplier of resources to your application. You might have a container system that sits either on bare metal or sits on let's say on a virtual machine. That container system is going to be a customer of that either virtual machine or bare metal server that is running on. You may have, let's say, an application that is connected or is running on a virtual machine, and that virtual machine is using the storage that is sitting on your SAN. So all these connections, IWO starts building all that. It basically start building all this supply demand system for you. And the importance with this is what IWO does, a lot of other similar solutions out there doesn't do, is it creates these correlations between what everything is connected to. And basically, if you're looking at a specific application, it can tell you this application is running on this virtual machine, is running on this data center and these hosts. It connects to this storage, connects out to these components that are sitting, let's say, on an instance in AWS or in Azure. Basically connects all the dots together for you and show you a full map of application. And what is important is if you have a part of that application, the component of it, if it's sitting, if it's the storage or if it's an external component that is not sitting in your data center that is running an issue, causing an issue or having a problem, and it can cause or it can affect the performance of your application, I will be able to identify that, right? So it builds that, it does analytics, and does its job. What is its job? It's to give you those actions, those placement, scaling, and capacity management actions. So it tells you where you can run your workload that will be more optimized than what is done today. How do you have to scale up and down your workload for better optimization? It's not only scaling up. A lot of times you have to scale down for better optimization. I had a lot of when I ran IWO in my environment, I had a lot of problem with overcommitting CPUs that added to the CPU clock time because there was too many CPUs that had to be managed or vCPUs that had to be managed. And also capacity planning. How much more capacity do you need to be able to run this application in a performant manner? It basically does what IWO delivers to you. Now, I told you guys that app dynamics is an important part. I want to talk about it quickly. Why is it important is because IWO's job is to give you visibility. So if you're only looking at your full stack without looking at an APM or application management, performance management solution, Cap Dynamics, you only get visibility up to that part of the stack. So you only can see your virtual machine is running slow or needs more resources. You can see your hypervisors need resources, your storage is running into an issue, but you can't really see inside your application, your services inside the application, your different components inside the application. That information comes from App Dynamics. So basically, it builds a bigger picture for you to look at. And when we look at the demo today, we'll look at what kind of information is available when you're looking at an application level rather than when you're just looking at a cluster. And if you don't want to take my word for it, there's over 2,600 companies out there already using a flavor of turbonomics. If either they're using turbonomics by itself, or if they're using Cisco branded turbonomics CVOM, or they're using the SaaS version that we recently announced, IWO. And there's a lot of names in here that are important. So that being said, I'm going to start showing you guys Intersight and then go into the IWO. Now, any question before I jump into the demo?
You mentioned that you have a lot of history with Citrix.
Yes.
How has this been beneficial in those types of environments?
Well, it depends on what component Citrix we're talking about, right? So IWO actually obviously taps into hypervisor, Citrix Zen server. It also integrates with your load balancers. So what it can do is you can see your response time from your load balancer and see if that, say that RTT time is causing application slowness or not. If you were just looking for Citrix VDI portion, IWO also does an entire VDI optimization. But here's the thing with VDI. I personally might not be running something like IWO to manage my VDI environment, depending on what type of VDI environment I'm going to be running, right? If it's just going to be, let's say, a golden image that's going to reset at the end of the day, and it's going to be running a very base image for, let's say, depends on the workload you're running. Something that you're not going to be customized a lot, right? Then I might be skipping having like a workload optimization on top of it, right? But if it's a dedicated image, It's going to be an image that's going to be customized. Either you're running in Citrix, you're running in VMware Horizon. If it's going to be a dedicated image or it's going to be a image with customization on top of it, then you may want to look at optimizing your performance there, because if those machines not going to get reset, then you're going to have machines that are going to be sitting around for a while. So definitely come to the picture to optimize the performance of those virtual machines for you.
Cool.
That
Thanks for the answer. Yeah, no, that was perfect.
Awesome. Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. I'm going to jump into Robert. How are we doing with time?
Our A-OK. It's 7:42, so we got plenty of time.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to start from Cisco Intersight. A disclaimer, the Intersight instance that I'm logging into is basically for our lab. Cisco Intersight is free for customers to start using. That's another thing I would like to tell you guys. So if someone is a UCS customer or HyperFlex customer, any compute being used by Cisco, you can today go to intersight.com and you can sign up for an account using your CCO ID, and you can go to there's instructions already set in there how to connect your UCS or how to connect your HyperFlex or individual servers. You can connect those directly to the Intersight and start taking specific advantages from it. It can inventory, you can have dashboards and so on, which I'll show you. Certain features would be more advanced in their paid versions, but the base version is basically available for everyone. Great. So here you can see Cisco Intersight, basically the first page that you log in. You're gonna look at, you can set up or customize your dashboard the way you want. I'll get to the dashboard in a minute. Before I go further, anything, this basically is not gonna be what you see if you set up Intersight the first time. This Intersight instance has multiple different features added on top of it, so it looks a little different. However, specific part of this is going to be included in any, even the base version of Intersight that any customers will use. We basically will be able to see the dashboard. The widgets might be slightly different, but you'll be able to see the dashboards. You will be able to see an inventory of all your environment. If you have servers, let's say if you're a UCS environment with Fabric interconnects, you can see your Fabric interconnects and chassis. If you're using Blade system, you can see your chassis. You can see your HyperFlex clusters, and we'll get to the rest of it in a bit. So storage and virtualization, these are parts that you can add on yourself. But if you're logging the first time to an Intersight, you might not see that. So starting from here, you have plenty of good widgets on the monitoring page. What I normally use this for is to monitor my environment. So let's say I want to look at my HyperFlex inventory. I'll look at it. A lot of times when I was running UCS, I was going to like upgrade all my blades, all my blade firmwares to a specific version to be everything be on the same code. This has like a really good widget that you can see all your server version inventory right here, like you can see it. And adding widgets are very easy. You just click add widget. And it has a searchable list of all the widgets. You can start searching for it. Let's say if I want to look for the server inventory, I can put server version inventory and it pops up. And you just click select and you click add. It's already added here, but we'll add it again. There are a lot of great widgets here that basically give you a really good quick monitoring, quick glance at it, figure out how my environment is today feature. Again, I use the server inventory version for upgrading my environment, like that I knew how many I have on what version and how many I have left to upgrade. It also can give you an inventory of different portfolio that you're using. It can give you a model summary. A very good widget here is here, the contract status. So in Intersight, you can see if your servers are covered with SmartNet or they're not covered, which if you're a Cisco customer, I'm sure you have a lot of run-ins with products or either servers or any other Cisco products that might have been missed out of your um, SmartNet contract, and you go look at it or try to open a ticket and you see the device is not covered, and you have to go talk to the partner, be able to get that back on the contract. This will give you a pretty nice view of what you have currently covered and what you don't have covered by SmartNet altogether. There are really plenty of good, useful widgets out here. You can look at an inventory of all your servers from here, and this is all searchable. So let's say if you want to look at specific servers or name tags that you put on them, you can search them here. You can look by the model of the servers or by the health. If you just want to look at the servers that are having a warning on it or have any critical situation on it, you can search it out here very quickly. And if you are looking at the server, there are specific actions you can take. Let me first dive into one of the servers. I think it would be great to look at one of the servers. If you dive into one of the servers, you can, first of all, see the health of that server. You can see their smarter contract that we covered. You can see what firmware version it is. If it had any problem loading the latest firmware version, you can see if it's covered, if basically the hardware compatibility with the version with the software that is running on it is if it's compatible or not. And we'll get to that HCL part in a bit, but it gives you a notification right here. And you have certain actions you can take. You can upgrade firmware from here, very convenient. You can launch a KVM to the server. Now, there's two different ways of launching KVM with Intersight. With the base version of Intersight, launching a KVM on the network is fully supported. So if you're sitting in your own environment, you're not over the internet, you can just launch KVM with a base free license. With the higher tier license, you can actually run the KVM from outside your network. That Intersight Assist appliance that sits in your environment will work as a proxy to get back to your environment and show the KVM or show the screen of your server to you. You can launch your UCS manager from here. This machine is UCS managed. It's managed by UCS manager, and you can directly open a tag case from here. Another good thing here is this middle page here, and I think this look a lot better in the servers, not just blades. You can actually look at what is inside your server. So if you have remote hands going to site to, let's say, work on this blade for you, there are RAMs that need to replace. If one of these DIMMs have failed, you can just show them, you can just tell them or guide them. You don't have to go look for the B200, this is M4, M5, the B200 data sheet and start figuring out where the location of the DIMM is. It takes out all the guesswork. It shows you what is failed, what is working, and you can guide them through it. And you can see all the inventory of server, what's running in your server, everything from one place, rather than going into the UCS managers or going to those servers directly and taking a look at it. Really great feature here is a hardware compatibility list. So this here can tell you what you're running on your server. Is it compatible with the firmware you're running today or not? And it can also give you recommendation for the direction you want to go to. So here, right here, you can see my hardware is compliant. I'm running a code that is not a faulty code. However, my adapter is not compliant for what I'm running on the top. And I can get recommendations. So I can come here and say, if I want to run VMware and I'm currently running 6.7 update 2, want to go to the next one, am I going to be okay with the current version I'm running? Do I need to go change my adapters or not? And it's going to give you a recommended driver version. So let's say if you're going to be running 6.7U3, then you're going to come and look and say, that's what you need as far as the firmware that you need to be sitting on, which in this case, you don't have to do anything. Basically, take all the guesswork out of upgrading your environment and making sure that you're running an optimum code for the workload you're putting on top of this. Another thing out here is you can export a list of your servers. You can get a report out of it and basically see what is, let's say, has the health issues. If you're going to be sending out the report um, to the manager or whoever you need to send it to, you can do it all from here. Another great feature right here is, well, looking at your chassis and fabric interconnects, I think they're pretty simple. It basically shows your chassis and fabric NFIs and see if there's any issues with them or not. You can launch into the UCS manager that these are covered with, and basically go to the UCS manager and look from there. You can also let you launch into the CLI of that fabric interconnect. So that also available here. But one of the great features we have here is with Hyperflex. So the big difference between Hyperflex and regular UCS is we manage storage and compute in Hyperflex, right? So it allows us to do a lot more with this platform. You can see that right off here, I'm looking at my Hyperflex environment, and I can see certain things that I don't even see inside if I go directly in my Hyperflex management, my HX Connect. I can see the storage utilization trend. And I can expand it and see what direction is it going to? Is it increasing rapidly? Is it going to run out of the storage pretty soon? I can see all that from one place. You can fully deploy a Cisco HyperFlex directly from Intersight from day one. So if you're a HyperFlex customer, you might know that you would need a virtual machine to deploy Cisco HyperFlex. With Intersight, you don't need that. You just use your Intersight, you put all your profile information and give the IP addresses of the management or UCS manager and the Hyperflex management. And it would just go out there and deploy for you and gives you a message when the deployment is done. So you can do everything done directly from here in Intersight. You can launch your Hyperflex Connect. If you have it deployed from Intersight, this basically will be the actual management of your environment. You can do upgrade directly from here. You can upgrade your UCS version. You can also upgrade your Hyperflex version, so all the whole bundle together directly from Intersight. You can look at your environment. You can look at you can do a health check. You can do a capacity runway. This is that ML that we were talking about, the machine learning. So you basically look at your environment and see what direction is you're going to. In our case here, we are deleting data off of this Hyperflex because it's a test environment. So you can see that it's going into a downward direction. So we're not running out of space. We're actually gaining more space. Now, these are the parts that you basically need to have like a little appliance to be able to connect to third-party systems. You can connect to external storage. As you can see, I have my Pure here that I'm connected to. You can come here, you can see your LANs, you can see your host group, you can see what drives you have sitting on your let's say SAN. If for now it's going to be Pure and Hitachi, we're going to have more vendors coming up pretty soon. You can see if these drives are say running out of space, if you need to expand your LANs. It gives you the controller status, how it's running, and also the drive status on your SAN. For virtualization, You can connect to Hyper-V, and you can connect to your VMware. And it's a really great feature. A lot of our customers use it for their level 1 support because we have full RBAC here. So they can just give one of their level 1 supports access to Intersight. And let's say if that person, if they are getting a call that an application is slow, they can just come here, log into the virtual machine, see how it's running, um, check the host that the virtual machine is sitting on, everything from Intersight without having to give them too much access. You can just give them a view access here, and they can go run and do the basic tasks before they start calling a higher level of support in the organization. Yeah, so here you can log into one of the labs here that has some virtual machines. Hopefully, I have some virtual machines here available. You can just directly KVM from here to your VMs, and let's pray to the demo gods that this comes out. Oh, there you go. It came out good. This is a lab environment, so we have a lot of people turning on and off machines here. So um, not everything may work at a time. This is the Kubernetes service that we just talked about. You basically can build your Kubernetes cluster if it's sitting on a virtual machine, if it's sitting on the bare metal, you can build it with a few clicks from here. Great orchestration features here in Intersight. You can actually start building workflows. Like, let's say a good example of this is um, I ran systems, and one of the tedious tasks that we always had was building virtual machine for, let's say, development team. You can put all those tasks here, and you can standardize it. So let's say if you have a new engineer on board that is not familiar with how you do your naming convention, how you build your machines, what virtual machine template do you use to spin up another VM, you can build all that here with these tasks that are just drag and drop. And we keep updating this list of tasks here, by the way, keep increasing more tasks. So let's say if you just need to uh, deploy a virtual machine from OVA, you can build a task, and you can build a whole timeline of tasks and set up inputs for them, and you can feed it into the next task. So for example, clone a virtual machine, rename it, uh, um, and then join it to the domain if it's a virtual machine, if it's a Windows virtual machine. Main part of Cisco Intersight is what basically looked at. So the part that we're going to talk about next is IWO, or Intersight Workload Optimizer. Now, I guess I said it, that IWO sits on top of Intersight, right? We do have IWO enabled here. There's IWO, where you can optimize your workloads. However, this is a demo environment, and it doesn't really have much of workload sitting on it. There isn't a lot of applications. It's showing virtual machines. It's showing volumes. These virtual machines are mostly system virtual machines, either vCenter or controllers for HyperFlex. There isn't a whole lot of real applications that we can go through in this environment. So I'm going to switch to a different environment to show you IWO, but this is basically what Intersight is. And it's fairly simple to set up. If you just want to set it up for your compute, let's say if it's a single server or if you have multiple servers, just go to intersight.com. You're going to start from there. You build an account with your CCO, and you come here to targets, and you claim a target, which is you're going to be claiming your for example, your standalone UCS server. And once you do that, it asks for device ID and claim code. There's instructions here that tells you where to go find that in your UCS server, and you can start using the Cisco Intersight. Any question on Intersight before I jump into the IWO? Okay. So I'm going to jump into IWO. This is basically CBOM. I'm going to give you a disclaimer. This is the virtual machine version of IWO. Again, the IWO we have, we don't have any real application in there, so I'm going to use this demo environment, but it is basically the same thing as far as the feature set goes. Okay, so this is the supply chain view of IWO. The first thing you're gonna log into and see is this. Actually, if you're the customer, you're gonna set up IWO or CO the first time, you're not gonna see anything here, right? It's gonna be, if you either got a virtual machine or enabled it in Intersight, you're not gonna get a whole lot of information there until you start setting up targets. That means that information that's gonna be fed into IWO. To do that, you go to settings here, you click on targets. There you go, target configuration. And most of our customers will usually start with, let's say, their hypervisors, right? You start with the hypervisors, add their VMware management, the vCenter, or add their Hyper-V management into here. They may add their cloud management, their AWS and Azure in here, their account information in here. If you have VDI, you will add your VDI. And if you want to work in your VDI or optimize your VDI environment, for your storage, you'll add your storage here. If it's a SAN, if you have a hyperconverged solution, you also add it here. Once you add all your targets, start going out there, and it does it very quickly, rather quickly. It starts going out and building the supply chain system for you. Now, there's 3 different views here on the dashboard. This is the main part you're going to be looking at if you use an IWO. There's 3 different views here. There's the application, there's on-prem, and cloud. The reason it's set up this way is if when we're talking about an application performance monitoring solution, right? So if you have an APM, like App Dynamics, you're going to get information populated here that is different because you're looking at your entire application stack. If you're just looking at, let's say, a cluster in your environment, then you're just going to be looking at that cluster, the virtual machine that's sitting on it, and so on. Or if you're only looking at your cloud, you're just going to be looking at your cloud. The application view is basically the comprehensive view that shows from the perspective of that specific application, no matter where the components sit, if they're on-prem or on cloud or combined, it's going to show you the whole stack altogether. Here on the application page, you're able to see all your top applications, and you can dive into those applications and dive into the components of those applications. So, for example, I'm going to start with, let's say, a mobile banking transfer app. Right off the bat, you're going to be able to see your response time, your application response time. You're going to be able to see your transaction usage. Right here, you're going to be able to see where your application is sitting on, what services it has, and you can click here. So your application is built off of business transactions. It's going to show all the business transactions in this application to you. You're going to be able to look at the application components or services that application is running. And it's going to show where all of this is running upon. So here, they are running on 4 virtual machines in this environment, right? Now, wherever you click on this application supply chain, you're going to be able to see a set of actions, pending actions. These actions are what IWO does. It basically give you a set of actions to optimize this application and this application only, because we're in this view. Now, again, those actions are either placement actions, scaling actions up or down, delete actions to give you more space because it's not being used, or start by actions. So start by actions are basically mostly directed toward cloud. So let's say if you're running one instance, like an instance of Ubuntu in Azure or AWS that is running a component view of application, it's basically going to tell you to buy a bigger instance if this is not running as fast as it should be, right? Basically giving you that recommendation. I'm not going to go out there and buy it for you, but I'm going to give you that recommendation to do that. You can click on any of these type of actions, and you can come here and actually expand the action. It explains you why it's recommending you this action. So, for example, here it's recommending moving a virtual machine from a host to another host, and it's going to explain and say because this host is running hot on CPU, or it doesn't have enough capacity as far as the RAM goes. The memory capacity is memory utilization is high, and it's going to tell you what's going to be the effect of moving it. So if it's going to be moving it from the source host to the destination host, what is going to happen? How much resource is going to get opened up on the source host? How much is going to be used on a destination? Basically explaining why it's giving you that recommendation, right? Click on a scaling, similar thing. It's going to tell you what kind of scaling is going to, what is the reason for that scaling. So here, it's actually telling you to resize the Java heap for this application because the usage is high on it, and basically telling you to do that. And then it's telling you to actually, well, not actually, it's telling you to, yeah, to increase the Java heap, but it's telling you to reduce the VM memory for a different virtual machine because it's not being used, it's not being utilized. It's telling you you can free up some resources or 1 gig of memory by reducing, because it's looking at this over time. It's never used as much RAM, and you can free up some of your resources. Basically, this is the application view. A lot of our customers, when they get IWO, they may not have an npm, so they're not going to look at their applications. But what they look at, they look at their clusters. So basically, you can go to an on-prem here. You can see all your clusters. These are all, I believe, VMware clusters here. Basically, you can come here and show all, look at all your clusters, and see how they're doing from one page. And then decide to dive into one of these clusters. So I'm going to go to the VC3 cluster. It has 8 hosts in it. It's going to tell me how's this host doing, how's the storage doing in this environment. It's going to give me some pending actions that I can look at all these actions and see what I can do to run this environment more optimized and better. For this specific cluster, it's mostly moving virtual machines. Now, one thing is a lot of people, a lot of VMware admins like myself are going to hesitate to let another tool either move machines around in their clusters or resize machines, right? Because uh, um, uh, I run my clusters in my VMware, and I have affinity or anti-affinity rules. I have rules that says these two virtual machines are not supposed to sit together because they're running the same application. I don't want them to ever be on the same host, because then that host goes down and my whole application goes down. Or I have affinity rules that are affecting the specific applications that I have, right? So they're gonna always come and ask and say, if I will start making decisions in my environment, what happens to my affinity rules? It's important to know that IWO CVOM can understand all those rules and import them in. Basically, we look at your cluster. We're gonna look at all those restrictions that you put on it. Those are the compliance restrictions that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. And we're gonna pull all that in and give you decisions based on that, with those in mind. So all these actions that is coming in here, if there are any restrictions set in VMware or Hyper-V, we honor those here, and we give in recommendations based on that. And our component here is cloud, which is the last part here. If you are a cloud user and you're running a lot of instances, I'm sure you're aware of reserve instances. And it's a really good feature here in IWO is if you have instances in Azure and AWS and you're running workloads or resources on it today, IWO can look at it and it can give you a recommendation on where to modify your reserve instances Let's say if you have reserve instances. So reserve instances is basically instances that you're going to be spending less money rather than the on-demand instances, right? So if you're going to have an instance in let's say medium-sized instance in AWS that is running any either serverless or server machine on it, you're gonna have two different models to pay for it, right? You're gonna be able to reserve this much resources for it and pay less on those, or you're gonna go on demand because you think your application is not gonna use too much, and it might just take peaks once in a week or whenever the peak usage for that application is, right? So IWO will be able to look at that and see where you can convert those on-demand instances to reserve instances to save you money, and also look at your reserve instances to see if they're over provisioned or they're under provisioned depending on the workload that is running on it. So it's a great usage of IWO here in the cloud. It's not the only thing. I'll obviously also look at the whole application. It tells you if you need to increase any of your instances or reduce any of your instances. You right size your environment based on that application. Another really great feature, and the last thing I'm going to talk about here is workload. I'm sorry, going to come here to planning, workload planning. It's been a while that a lot of our companies have been not only relying on on-prem data centers, right? 90% of the customers I talk to, they have on-prem, they also have Azure and AWS, have a lot of workloads sitting either on public cloud or sitting on their environment, right? A lot of times, decision to move a workload or on a specific application to the cloud is usually a decision made by higher up or made by someone that decided this application has to move. A lot of times they move the application, they realize the cost of that running that application does not comply with what they were planning on originally, decide to move back, so added more cost to their customer. There's a great tool here. You can start doing a planning on where to migrate or how to optimize your environment, right? So you can optimize cloud or you can also migrate to cloud. So you can start deciding, say, let's say I want to go to my virtual machines and I'm going to pick specific virtual machines that I want to move up to cloud. Going to look at these virtual machines and it's going to start giving you recommendation on how to move it to be more cost efficient. And you can choose any of your cloud instances that you have, either AWS or Azure subscriptions, and basically give you a recommendation based on that and create your plan. The button was hiding behind my, and you can choose where you want to move it to. Say I want to move it to Azure US West. It's going to run the plan. It's going to tell me, it's going to take some time to run this plan. It's going to tell me what is the most optimized way for me to move this workload to Azure.
Is there a way for it to tell what the cost is of having it on-prem versus having it moved?
It's well, the thing is running. It's going to tell you what is the best way, I guess, to run it in the cloud, right? But running it on-prem, it's not going to have KPIs for you to basically determine what's the cost for running it on-prem.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. You'd almost
Yeah,
and have to feed that information to it
Yeah.
in order for it to do that analysis.
that would be a pretty complex calculus right there, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it would
are
be
you
worth
gonna-
a lot of money.
Yeah, if you can figure out how to do that. The problem is, I think you would find if you ask 10 different IT managers, you get 10 different answers on how they want to calculate the on-prem cost. The cloud cost is simple, but when you say like, well, how much is my VM cost me? Well, I don't know. Do I count the entire storage array that I bought? Do I only count some of the storage array? What about the expansion shelves? What about the IT salaries and all those things? And you'll probably, I think it's just really, you're right. If someone can figure that out, they'd be making a lot of money with that app. I just think that's a tough app to.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Can this, Mo, do you know, can this also, I know you mentioned on demand and reserved. Can it also have a tie-in for spot instances in AWS?
I think they're working on that. They still haven't got there yet, but for now, it's going to give you that on demand and reserve one.
Got it. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, guys. So that was great questions. I wanted to open to you guys to ask more questions now. Basically, I tried to be efficient with the time. I didn't want to run too much over the time. I already talked for about an hour and 17 minutes. I hope I didn't tap too much into your night, but please ask any questions if you have.
So it's got that point where it offers a bunch of suggestions. Now I know it would be kind of nuts for anybody to actually do it, but is there a way to just click and say, yeah, do all these?
It actually, so the goal with this tool is actually to automate all those. So there's two ways you can do these suggestions. You can decide to apply the suggestions, or you can automate them. Let IWO take care of those suggestions. And it might sound crazy because you're like, okay, now it's gonna move everything around and do things. But you can choose what decision, what type of decisions you want to automate, right? So moving virtual machines from, or moving instances, or moving, let's say, workloads here and there, it's not too intrusive, right? So you can automate those. You're gonna start with that. Resizing virtual machines, scaling up. Maybe you want to start allowing the tool to decide to scale up your resources when it needs to. You can automate that. So you can decide where you want to automate it. And it has the settings to allow you to basically automate based on what type of action it is. Did I answer you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those where I guess, being able to go through a demo and click on things and have them execute based on rules or other things would be make it clearer, but knowing you can, I guess, is a starting point.
Yeah. So here we don't have any real workload, so it's not actually not going to move anything because this is just data sets here. However, running CWAM and IWO is fairly simple. Normally, when I run this for customers, it takes about an hour for it to set up and done. Well, setup itself it doesn't take any time. If it's on-prem, it's a virtual machine. You just need to deploy the OVA and start adding the targets in there. It takes a few minutes to do that once the OVA is deployed. If it's running on the SaaS platform, it takes a little bit more because we have to add it on the back end. And once it's enabled, then you can go ahead and start adding targets to it. But once it runs, it's fairly quick. It starts giving you suggestions all over your clusters. Obviously, you're not going to be automating it right off the bat, but you can start looking and see what suggestions it gives you, and pretty much covers all your environment.
I remember there used to be a dCloud lab to bring up CWAM and get it running, and you can attach the devices. I don't know if it's still there. I haven't checked in quite a while, but if you're interested, everyone with a Cisco.com account has access to dCloud, right? dcloud.cisco.com, log on, and you can do a search. There's I probably hundreds of labs now, so you can try that.
dCloud is a really good resource. And they usually say, like, even if you don't find what you're looking for in dCloud, no matter what it is, if it's Intersight or any other Cisco product, reach out to us, reach out to your Cisco team, and they can schedule something that might be there that's not available to you, and they will send you a link, and you can start doing a demo of the product.
I just want to make a quick comment. I think for the D cloud, a regular user cannot schedule the demo anymore. It has to be invited by SE for most of the demo.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I haven't done it in a while, so I apologize. But
Because the other day I tried to schedule one, and that's like it give you like an error saying that like level 1 and 2 user cannot schedule like the actual decal demo. I think it has to be invited by SE.
I know that there are certain labs that used to be locked down. So I don't know if you've tried another one just to see if it's open. I know there are some that you do have to be invited by the SE, but I'm not sure if that is extended to all the labs. I wouldn't think so, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, because I tried the one. I may be trying the one that is not available, but I just noticed that before you can just schedule it like anywhere, any lab you want. But I guess they probably lock it down now.
Yeah, they shouldn't. They shouldn't, but I don't know. I can't say for certain.
I want to say they started restricting things in dCloud because I tried to schedule a few for my customers, and I tried to put them schedule them for like more than a week, and it wouldn't allow it anymore. So they definitely started restricting things. You used to be able to schedule labs in dCloud for 3 months or sort of indefinitely have it.
It's probably taking up all the resources. They needed CWAM running in the back end.
Yeah, exactly. They need to run their own lab.
Yeah.
Actually, that's how Cisco came about to integrate with Turbonomics. So Cisco had ran into the issue that they need to build more data centers, and this is a few years back. When they brought in Turbonomics, they started optimizing whatever that Cisco IT runs on all the data centers, and we have a lot of them. And it got to the point that they didn't build a new data center. They pretty much shut down a lot of the resources in one of their data centers too, because they didn't really need it anymore. So it optimized a lot.
Yeah.
Then they just go and buy the company. Look how much money you saved us.
Any other questions for Mo? We're at 8:23. We did run just a little bit longer tonight, but it's totally cool.
I just have a quick question. Because we happen to be doing a POC for Hyperflex and Intersight. There is a virtual appliance for Intersight. What is it for? So why do we need an on-prem appliance to connect? Because since Intersight is like a SaaS platform, so why do we need an on-prem virtual appliance?
So there are 2 ways to manage Hyperflex, right? What you're talking about is called Hyperflex Connect. So what you can do is you can build a Hyperflex on-prem using the Hyperflex Connect, which you're going to use it using a virtual machine. And probably the demo team decided to go that route, and then later added the whole Hyperflex cluster into the Intersight. So yes, you can do that, and you can still manage it with Intersight afterwards. If you just start building it off from Intersight, from the get-go, you can just do it off of the Intersight without having to have the HX Connect build out separately. It's still going to build an HX Connect. It's just not going to be a separate VM that sits somewhere else.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Okay, so if there are no other questions, we'll close it down for the night. I don't remember what we have on deck for next month. Jason might have the notes for that, but
it's going to be a collab topic, but I don't have any specifics.
Okay, we'll do WebEx. We'll just get on a WebEx and have a happy hour, and we'll just talk about the WebEx feature. How about that? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.